The Hollow House. It began with a solicitor's letter. My great-uncle, a man I'd never met, had died and left me a house. Not just any house, but a sprawling, ivy-choked estate deep in the English countryside. Its name, written in delicate ink on the envelope, was Hollow House. The inheritance came with conditions. I must spend 1 full week in the house, alone. No contact with the outside world. No leaving the grounds. If I lasted the 7 nights, the house and its contents would be mine. I accepted. Of course I did. I shouldn't have. Hollow House was older than anything I'd ever seen. Blackened stone, sharp gables, windows like eyes set too deep into a skull. The gate creaked like a groan as I pushed it open. The gravel path was nearly devoured by weeds. The caretaker, an expressionless man named Giles, handed me a brass key, muttered, "Don't go into the east wing," and left without waiting for questions. Inside, the air was stale. Curtains hung like forgotten corpses. The walls whispered when the wind shifted. Somewhere deep inside, I heard a door creak open. I told myself it was just the house settling. On the second night, I explored the west quarter. It was lined with portraits, grim-faced ancestors in oil and gold frames. As I passed them, I had the distinct feeling their eyes followed me. One portrait was covered with a black cloth. I lifted it. A young woman, beautiful but pale, with eyes that seemed hollow. Underneath, a brass plate read, "Isadora Hollow, 1874 to 1899. That night, I dreamed of her standing at the foot of my bed. Her eyes were empty sockets. On the third day, I discovered the mirror room. It had no furniture, only floor-to-ceiling mirrors on every wall. My reflection multiplied endlessly, but one version of me didn't move when I did. It stood, head tilted, watching. I turned to look behind me. Nothing. But when I turned back, all reflections had vanished. Every mirror showed the same thing, the empty room, except for one in which I was still standing. On the fourth night, I broke the rule. I entered the east wing. The corridor there was colder. The wallpaper peeled like dead skin. At the end stood a locked door. The key turned with resistance. Inside was a nursery, dusty toys, a cradle, a small rocking horse that began to move on its own. There were scratch marks on the floor, tiny handprints on the walls. Something giggled. I fled. On the fifth day, I found a music box in the library. When I opened it, a tune played, slow, mournful. The lights flickered. The air turned bitter cold. A voice whispered, "She's still here." I turned to see the portrait of Isadora had appeared in the library. It hadn't been there before. Her eyes were no longer hollow. They looked alive, and they were watching me. That night, a storm rolled in. Lightning struck a nearby tree. The house shook. Doors slammed on their own. Windows cracked. The grandfather clock struck 3 a.m., though it had never worked before. In the hallway, I saw a figure, Isadora, dressed in black, hair floating as if underwater. She whispered, "Finish it." Then she vanished. In a hidden drawer in the master bedroom, I found a diary. It belonged to Isadora. She had been locked in the east wing by her husband, labeled mad. She spoke to mirrors, heard voices. She set the fire that killed them both. The house was her tomb, and I, her only blood, had returned to finish her story. The seventh night. I walked the halls with the music box in hand. It played without winding. The portraits whispered. The mirrors bled shadow. The nursery door opened by itself. Inside, the cradle rocked. A lullaby hummed in the air. I whispered, "I release you." The air thickened. Then a silence so total it rang in my ears. Morning. The storm had passed. The house was quiet. Still old, still hollow, but different. In the library sat a new envelope. Inside, a deed. My name written cleanly. Outside, the caretaker waited. "Did she rest?" he asked. I nodded. He handed me the key. "The Hollow House is yours now." Beneath the lake, I rented the cabin to disappear. It sat alone at the edge of a forgotten lake in the northern woods, surrounded by trees that whispered even when the wind was still. The real estate agent had hesitated when I signed the papers. "No refunds," she warned. "Some places don't want company." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. The lake had no name. Locals just called it the Deep. There were no boats, no docks, no fish either, they said. It was too still, too quiet. I stepped onto the shoreline on my second day and watched my reflection ripple. For a moment, it didn't move when I did. Just a glitch, I told myself. But when I turned to leave, I saw wet footprints behind me. That night, I dreamed I was under the lake. I could breathe. I floated in green-black silence. Above me, the moon shimmered on the surface, and something drifted past me. Long hair, pale fingers, a face without eyes. I woke gasping. My bed was soaked, the window open. The curtains fluttered like breath. On the fourth day, a knock at the door. A boy, maybe 12, muddy clothes, blank stare. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "Why?" I asked. He just pointed at the lake. "She doesn't like when people stay too long." Then he walked into the trees and vanished. I followed. No footprints, no sign he'd ever been there. I found it in a drawer beside the bed. Old leather, cracked spine, a faded name inside. Thomas Grieve, 1963. Pages soaked in watermarks, ink smeared. But I could still read parts. "She comes from the bottom. The drowned don't stay quiet." I saw her again, in the mirror, in me. The last page just said, "Don't sleep on the water." At dusk, I went to the lake again. My reflection stared back, but something was wrong. My face was smiling. I wasn't. It lifted its hand. I didn't. Then it reached forward, as if trying to touch the other side of the surface. I stumbled back and ran to the cabin. I closed the curtains, but still felt watched. That night I heard water, dripping, splashing, from inside the cabin. In the bathroom, the tub was full. I hadn't used it. I approached slowly. The surface was still. Then a hand broke through, pale and thin, reaching for the rim. I screamed. The hand vanished. Water spilled over, forming words in puddles on the floor. "Come back." I couldn't stay away. At dawn, I walked into the lake. Cold swallowed me. Deeper, deeper. I saw her, hair like weeds, mouth open in silent scream, and dozens of others, floating, twisting, watching. They opened their eyes, and they looked like mine. I kicked upward, broke the surface, crawled back to land. But something came with me. Now I hear her, not in dreams, in daylight. She hums through the trees. She whispers from the drains. The mirrors fog even when there's no heat. The boy appeared again, this time older. His eyes were empty sockets. "You're hers now," he said. I locked every door, every window, but it won't help. I leave this for whoever finds the cabin next. If you're reading this, leave. Burn this place. Don't look into the water. Don't listen when she calls, because she will call. And if you answer, you'll never stop drowning.